Turn it up, it's about downtown, so leave it up. I'm so sick of being so serious. It's making my brain delirious. I'm just talking true, don't tell you about the shit we do.
Hey everyone, Tyrael here, and I've been trying to record this all day, and it hasn't been working. I've been having some trouble with OBS, and I'm hoping it'll work this time. So, basically I've been having trouble. I've been getting an echo. If anyone has used OBS and knows why I'm getting an echo for some reason, please let me know. My regular microphone doesn't want to play ball tonight. It's just being a little bitch, so I'm leaving it over there, and I've got my headset on instead. So hopefully this works, and let's get right into it. So this is an episode about building a gaming PC. I built my first one almost 10 years ago now, and I just recently completely overhauled my computer. There's only two parts that are still the same. And I wanted to go ahead and show you guys that and tell you how you can build your own one, because it saves you thousands of dollars. So, first off, you're going to need a motherboard. The motherboard is what connects everything. Everything plugs into the motherboard, and the motherboard does all the work for you. So, you're going to want to take a look at that motherboard and match it up and its ports with everything else you want to buy. You want a motherboard that has ports for everything that you want, and has enough ports so that you can expand later on. So, to go on that motherboard, you need a processor. A processor does all the calculations for your computer. For a gaming PC, it's not as important as most people believe, but you do want a decent one. You gotta have a decent one, but you don't need the absolute best in the world. So, basically, the processor has a socket type and a core type. You have to make sure that your motherboard supports both. Like, I have a socket LGA 1150 and a Core i7. So I need a motherboard that has a socket LGA 1150 and a core that supports the core type i7, which it does, at least mine does. And that's really all you need to worry about with that. They have to match up. And of course you want to buy a heatsink. Normally a processor comes with a heatsink and fan, but they generally come with a really small, kind of crappy one. So you don't really want to use that. You don't need to overclock, you don't need water cooling, you don't need something huge, you don't need just this massive setup for it. You just need a little bit better cooling than they usually provide. So generally you're going to want to buy one. You're just going to have to make sure it has the right socket. Like I have an LGA 1150 heatsink and fan. It'll just screw into the motherboard. It'll have a little plate or little plates that screw onto the motherboard, and then it screws onto the plates. And it just sits there. It's not that hard. You're going to have to put thermal paste in between the CPU and the heatsink just to make a good seal so the heat transfers well. And you're also going to need RAM. RAM is your temporary memory storage for whatever you're using right then. Gaming PCs do need a good amount of RAM. You're going to want to get some RAM for that. At least 16 gigabytes is my recommendation. More is better, but 16 will get you running pretty well. And those are going to be either a 240 pin or 288 pin is the current ones. Obviously, if someone views this several years from now, it's going to be 288 and something else. But right now it's 240 and 288 pin. You got to make sure that you have the right pin because they don't fit into the other ones. 288 won't fit into 240 and vice versa. You're also going to need a hard drive for your permanent storage. Everyone knows about hard drives. They all connect with SATA, and every current motherboard has SATA ports, so you don't really need to worry about that. And I'd recommend at least a terabyte of space. It's like 50-60 bucks for a terabyte now, so it's not that bad. You could get several terabytes, honestly. And you're going to also need, in the way of drives, at least one DVD drive, and those are pretty cheap. Just get one with read-write capabilities in case you ever want to burn a disk. You're gonna need to have the right capabilities. But again, they're SATA. It'll plug into just any modern motherboard. So another thing you're gonna need is the graphics, which is a big thing in gaming PCs. You're gonna need good graphics. Like right now, I've got my old graphics card. It's one of the two things I haven't switched out yet, and it's 2 gigabytes. It's a slightly older model. It's about a year and a half old. It still runs everything just fine, but I could be running things much, much better, but I don't. So once I upgrade that, I'll be upgrading it to 4 gigabytes, which is what I recommend. That'll run you about $300 to $400. sounds like a lot, but we're talking about building a good one. You can always, you know, spend $100 and just get a 2 GB and still run everything fine if your budget is a little bit tight. That's just fine as well. And last, but certainly not least, you need a power supply. Power supply is what brings the power into the computer and then distributes it to all the components. They're generally pretty cheap. I'd recommend bare minimum 700 watts. That's what I have and I need to upgrade it. You're gonna probably aim for at least 1,000. Again, they're relatively cheap. They're one of the cheapest components in the computer. And of course, I didn't mention it, but you do need the case. The case is where everything is. It's the box. It's that big metal box with all the stuff in it. You need a case. So, that's generally pretty cheap. I bought a slightly more expensive one. Mine was about $120, and it was on sale, so it would have been more. They can run up to $200. It can be as low as $20. I obviously wouldn't recommend a flimsy $20 case. Maybe aim for 70, 80 bucks if you're trying to stay cheap. So now that you have all your components, you got to put them together. So first, you're going to go ahead and you're going to sit your motherboard somewhere safe and somewhere away from static. Static shocks can actually destroy this. That's why you don't want to wear like fuzzy socks or a fuzzy jacket. You don't want to be rubbing around on the carpet. Just touch a unpainted metal surface before working with all this stuff. Just because it's static electricity from your hand can actually melt some of the stuff in the actual components because the wiring is really small. It can actually just overload it. So then you take the processor, it'll have a little marking on the corner, line up with the marking on the motherboard, just lightly place it in. Do not force anything at all. If you have to use what you can easily tell is excessive force, you will break it. It's not fitting right. There's something up or you have it in slightly wrong, it's slightly off. Do not ever try to force it. Then you just take one finger and you close the locking mechanism, and once it's closed and locked, you're going to be just fine. It's going to be locked in. Then that's the point where you put your heatsink and fan setup on there. You put in the plates that it sits on, you just screw it in. Be very careful, don't over tighten it, but don't leave it too loose. It's not that difficult, just a few screws, screwdriver. And at this point, you can put your RAM in. I actually had to put my RAM in before my heatsink and heatsink and fan for my CPU because they actually sit underneath the fan part of it. They're a little bit close to the CPU. And I have a slightly larger heatsink fan setup. So obviously, I had to put them in first or else I wouldn't have been able to get them in. But then you can, in most motherboards, you can put the RAM in afterwards. And just slide it in lightly, make sure everything lines up, it's the right pin, and just lock it in. And once that's done, you can go ahead and put your back plate into your case. What you're going to do is you're going to take the back plate that comes with the motherboard, just hammer it into the opening in the back. Make sure it's right side up. And actually, I think in my recording of this, I put it in upside down and then secretly flipped it right side up without you guys noticing. Well, now you notice. But I wasn't paying attention. Now, if you have a top-mounted power supply, you're gonna want to put it in first. It depends on the case. My case has a bottom-mounted power supply, so I put it in later. But if you have a top-mounted one, put it in first and make sure it's absolutely secure. If it is not secure, it can fall and break everything below it. You need to make sure it's secure before you place anything below it. I do not have to do that because mine just sits on the bottom. No danger whatsoever. Then you're going to sit your motherboard in, and once the motherboard is in, you're just going to lightly screw it in to all the connections. Just make sure every single hole is filled. The motherboard has a form factor, like mine's an ATX. Your case and motherboard have to have the same form factor. Most of them now are all ATX, or some version of it. So really, it doesn't take much to get them to line up. You're not going to be like, oh god, I can't find anything. You're going to find a million things that all work. So once you have that screwed in, you're going to go ahead and you're going to put your hard drive in. Once you put your hard drive in, it'll usually slide into a bay and either screw in or clip in. Once it's in the bay, you can plug it into your motherboard and then move on to your graphics card, which is what I did next. You slide your graphics card in, you're going to have to remove a little plate on the back, just pull it out, and once it's out, you just slide the graphics card in, and once it's in, just make sure it's seated right. It will have a PCIe 3.0, generally is what it will have now. socket type, so you just got to make sure the motherboard has that type of socket for your graphics card. Now, if you get an older one, it's gonna probably be a PCIe 2.0. So got to make sure the motherboard supports that. But a 3.0 slot will fit a 2.0 graphics card, but a 3.0 graphics card does not fit in a 2.0 slot. So just make sure you have that right. So I have an old 2.0, but it's fitting in my 3.0 slot. I'm going to be upgrading that soon. So it works now, but obviously if you're buying a more recent card, you got to make sure you got that 3.0 slot. And I would just recommend always be forward thinking and be ready for your next upgrade. So you don't have to buy a whole new setup when you want to upgrade. You can only just go one part at a time. Always be ready for the next upgrade. So next, I would put in my case, since the power supply's on the bottom, I put the power supply in next. And you just screw that in nice and tight, 4 screws on the back of the machine, and you're set. Now, if there's any extra fans, you can install them at any point. If you didn't have enough fans in your case, or it didn't come with fans, fans are only a couple bucks each. Just make sure they're the right size, like 80 millimeters, 120 millimeters. They just all fit in the same thing. Just make sure the ones in the back are blowing out, the ones in the front are blowing in, all that stuff. Just make sure there's airflow in from one side, out the other. That just keeps air flowing through the case, and you want that good airflow. You want it all going in the right direction and all working together to help cool down your PC, because it can get very hot, which will actually damage the components. So at this point, what I was recording with kind of died out. It ran out of battery, but all I did was slide in my DVD drive, which is very simple. You just open up the front at the very top, just pull out that thing in the front and slide it in, lock it in like a hard drive, plug it in like a hard drive, SATA, and then you hook up everything in your power supply. Generally, you're going to have to make sure the power supply is right for the motherboard. They're all really going to be 24-pin plus 8-pin. You're going to need a 24 and an 8 to plug into your motherboard. Some graphics cards will require maybe a 6-pin plug, 8-pin plug. Mine doesn't require one. Yours might. Just make sure you have the plug for it. And your hard drives and disk drive will generally be an SATA power plug. You may have some fans in your case that take a 4-pin plug, and just make sure you have that, which generally there will be some on it. And if there aren't, you can always probably get an adapter. I'm sure there are adapters out there. So once you have that all hooked up, you can close the case up. You're done. Everything's in there. You got your hard drive, disk drive, motherboard, CPU, RAM, cooling, graphics. So you got everything in your case. Your case is nice and cooled. Everything is how you want it. Now what you do is you plug it into your monitors. Obviously you have to have monitors. I can't show you my monitors because they're behind all this. But you're also going to need your input, your mouse, your keyboard. Oh god, you probably heard that. I bumped a key and it made a noise. Are we still recording? Yeah, we're still recording, but I couldn't show you my keyboard. Game board. Microphone you don't need a game board for this, but just showing you all the input output stuff I got around here. And obviously my headset. And once you have all that, you're gonna go ahead, boot it up, plug everything in, and you're just going to go ahead and put one of these in. It's an operating system. This is Windows 7 that I have sitting right here. I need to put that back in its case soon so it doesn't get dusty. And all you're going to have to do is you're going to have to put in the product key either before or after it installs. And then it just installs. You have an operating system. You're set to go. And once you have that up, basically all I can say now is install all the Windows updates first. Then install all the drivers for all your hardware, internal hardware. I made the mistake of forgetting to install my wireless adapter hardware, my software for it, and I kept disconnecting it. It screwed up one of my videos. So remember to install everything, every single piece of software. Then take all the discs that you got with all your stuff, install them, all the little supplementary discs, all the driver discs, all the guide discs, install all of them, and then go and install the online driver software for all your shit all over this area. Your microphone, if you got one, headset, mouse, keyboard, game board. You can find those all online, install them all, or shit will not work right. And then, once all that's done, it sounds like a lot, but after doing this for a while, I could do it in maybe 5 hours or less, including installation time, which takes a lot of time. Compared to the whole 5 hours, it takes maybe an hour, 2 hours of that time. So really, I'm not even doing anything for that after I put in the product key. So it's nice, quick, easy, painless. And at that point, you have a working PC. Install your games, install your stuff, have fun. It's yours, it's custom, and it's at least twice as cheap as buying one. Like, mine cost me $2,000 to $2,500. And I'm going to include everything that's in it down below. So if you want to know what I have, again, make your own. You don't have to copy mine. But if you want to know what's in my PC, I'll have it all below, and I'll probably update it once I get a new graphics card. Even though this video says I don't have a new graphics card, in the future when I have it, people will still be able to come to this video and click that link and see what it is. And that's all I have for now. I'm going to be including the winner of the War with Friends in my little message to the subscribers below. Down there. Because I actually haven't randomized it yet. I've been so busy today, I haven't even gone there and put in the names. So I'm going to be doing that before this video goes up and placing it there, so you guys can know who won that. So hopefully you get your computer nice up and running, and hopefully I don't have to re-record this because of some stupid echo crap. And if it's not echoing that bad, guess what? You probably just listened to me with a little bit of echo, because I'm not doing it for the 5th frickin' time. So, thank you all for watching, and I hope it helped. Tyrael out.
Come on.